Are you at your point where you think you've hit your bottom, or maybe that there's just no way you're ever going to feel like things can change? I was like that. I really was. And I want you to know, my name is Bromo, by the way. I want you to know that there is a way out. Please join us for my podcasts.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
All right. Hey, you're hearing my voice on a Friday. On a Friday, the 22nd of March. The sun is out. It's about 25 degrees, but a mother load of a storm is coming in, and that is why I want to do this podcast today so I don't have to come in over the weekend. My name is Bromo. I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is 2/17/09. I am not an expert by any means. I don't have any credentials to call my own. I just have a experience in life and with alcoholism and living around other people who go through the same thing. And part of my strength, actually I should say all of my strength of my podcast, have been my guests. Those of you who have heard my podcast before heard my story. When I lived in Minot, you heard my story there, and you had to hear it again when I came out here to Bismarck. But I firmly believe in this podcast. I'm so proud of it. On our Facebook page, there is a Way Out group page. I have so many people on there that just want to go on there and support others. They just want to go on there and read about others. They might make a comment or two or just stay anonymous. This page is for positive thinking and for life and for getting your life in the right direction. I guess I want to say the perfect sentence, and my next guest can probably help me with this. Stacy Lynn Robertson out in Arizona. Stacy and I just met on the phone. We really did. I reached out to her yesterday on Facebook, and we became Facebook friends. Stacy, how would you, now that you've heard a couple of my podcasts, how would you define a good theme for to describe to people? Because I don't want people to think, oh, that's just for alcoholics or drug addicts. It's really for life, positive thinking, and for anybody who wants to support others. Would you think that would be right?
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And something I didn't share in our little, meet and greet that we just did on the phone is I actually have already benefited from, I've listened to the first 14 episodes, literally just from yesterday afternoon to earlier this morning. And I'm going to listen to the rest of them.
14 of them, and you're still sane?
I am. It's amazing. I know, right?
You've gotten over that horrible my voice in your head there. Go ahead. I'm sorry I cut you off, and I'll do that a lot.
It's totally okay. So it's funny that you say that because I listen to things at 2 or 3 times the speed. So it's even more.
That is perfect. I didn't even think about that. Perfect. Do I sound any better, or do I still sound awful? Do I sound any better there, Stacy?
You sound great.
Oh,
but
God,
I want to add, though, that there were things that I was able to relate to in the part of the stories, all the various things that you were sharing over the episodes.
Yeah.
And that surprised me.
Really?
I don't specifically have an issue with alcohol or any substances at this time in my life, but my dad passed from, alcoholic related type, illnesses.
Yeah.
And dealing with him, in his alcoholism, and then just some of my own life struggles over the course of the years. There were things that you said that I was like, I feel that way, and it's given me a different, how do I say, like almost like a motivate. I woke up this morning super excited.
No
about
way,
my
really?
life.
Is that right?
Yes, and I've had some pretty significant struggles, as you may or may not know, which is why I do what I do, and I'm talking about what I'm talking about. Same thing that you mentioned as well at the beginning of this podcast is that I have a podcast that has a very ominous title, but it is about stories of hope and how people have gotten through those struggles, and it's a bigger picture than just, its title. And I think that's what is awesome about yours as well, is that there is a relatability. And I think that more people telling their stories helps us to destigmatize what it means to go through addiction, or to go through suicidal thoughts, or to go through a mental health crisis.
Well, I have to tell you, first of all, you paid me the greatest compliment by telling me that. Thank you. About saying that
you're welcome.
That's really, truly, and you know this from what you do. And we do this because what a kick it is for us to hear that we, whatever we say does matter with people. And I want to now, if I could, introduce what Stacy Lynn Robertson does. And it's terrific. And this is how I became interested in her as a guest immediately the second I saw this. We have a mutual friend named Darren. And she had posted on there, sorry if I clear my voice. I'm very professional when I do that. By the way, when I cleared my voice, I sounded professional that way, didn't I?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. She has a podcast called Suicidal Thoughts Podcast. It's on Spotify. You can find any other platforms you can find it on?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much all the other platforms. Like, this is on Spotify, but I think I'm on 7 or 8 of them, and you're probably on 7 or 8 different platforms too, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
As far as I know, yeah. And it'll continue I'll get it over to YouTube as well.
Now, you said, that got me intrigued on our, like you said, meet and greet, and I love that term because we just met 20 minutes ago on the phone. You said you have a trailer that you play, kind of not a warning, but just letting people know how it's of serious nature. Is that right?
Yeah. So, well, 2 things I'll tell you. So I have a trailer that's a promo that's about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Which I do have, loaded if we want to listen to it. That also tells kind of about, what the mission is. My podcast is directed to connect people to people, people to resources, and resources to more people.
Oh, that's perfect.
But yeah, the very first episode that I list on there is I call it a trigger warning and disclaimer. Because like you said at the beginning, I do have professional credentials. I was a therapist for 20 years. However, the reason for the podcast is to really just open up the dialogue and to have more conversations. So I have to be clear about that, because I am a professional, that I'm not doing the podcast to promote a business or to get coaching clients it's really just to help people feel more comfortable to talk about suicide or mental health or addiction or any of the things that they're struggling more often, to reach out to people, and that other people will reach out to their friends and their family in a way, if they're not normally doing that. And, and I just warn people that I actively have people who talk about their suicide attempts or the death of their family member, or in my case, my own struggle with suicidal depression. I have first responders, mental health professionals on there. So we're talking about all kinds of pretty triggering type things.
Now, I'm going to ask you. I
think people should know that.
I'm fascinated because you have so much experience in this, and you have experience with thoughts of suicide, correct?
Yes.
So I will probably ask you some questions, and they might be dumb, but I've had some experience in that too as well. You left off on one of your episodes, and I won't spoil it, but basically somebody I went to recovery with ran across suicide. He's no longer with us. And so we will get into this. I also want to commend you on the fact that you are being so honest and you're being upfront, and you understand this podcast perfectly, and you haven't even heard it that much, but you get the gist of it. This is for honesty. And this is, like you said, to make aware for other people that we all go through certain thoughts. You had mentioned trigger. That's the same trigger that we have with alcohol or drugs, correct? Like something that would make us think of something that when we were using or drinking, we go into a bar and we're told in our first year of recovery, don't go into a bar. That's because there's triggers everywhere. There's triggers on TV. There's triggers at Super Bowl. We learn to cope with those triggers as we progress. And that's what you had just said 2 minutes ago. You brought up triggers. That's the same thing in your and your talk about suicide. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it is because so at the end of the day, and you correct me if I'm wrong about this, but we use substances or there are people who cut, there are people who do all manner of things. Whether that becomes life impairing or not isn't really the issue, but we are trying to either manage or deal with pain. And, some kind of interaction that's, in a relationship or a dynamic with a parent or something that we don't exactly know how to deal with. And then and I'm sorry I hope you can hear that noise, but
no,
this is real life. So
was that your stomach growling or what was that?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't have to apologize about
I have a window
anything.
Open.
You just heard me cough up a lung a second ago, and don't be apologetic about anything. But continue.
Well, and that is what is fun about when you listen into what I appreciated about your interviews on the podcast as well, and even your presence, on the radio and in your shows, is that there's just this real life component. We cough, we sneeze. Yes, there's an edit button over here or a mute button, but the chances I'm going to sneeze and hit that button at the same time.
That's about 10 years of talent right there if you can do that. That's broadcasting school right there.
There's school for that.
You just mentioned something, and I want to delve into this as well. Pain. You say people bring it. People use pain to feel at ease.
Well, they're trying to avoid pain.
Avoid pain, correct. Like people that cut, I have no clue what compels them to do that. I have none.
Well, and so that's probably a whole topic on its own. But part of what's interesting with that too, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes people feel so compartmentalized or disassociated or numb that sometimes cutting is a way to feel something.
I don't understand.
Kind of in the way that sometimes people might use experiences to, adrenaline junkies, so-called, they want to feel alive. They want to feel their heartbeat. They want to feel some level of pain. And it also releases endorphins in the brain.
Interesting.
Because that's the body's natural response to being harmed or cut.
Okay.
Is to, it's some feel-good chemicals. And so, when you understand that they're not getting it from the other natural things that are occurring in life because life is so painful.
Right.
Then it just helps us to have a little more compassion for each other. And that's at the end of the day what I'm all about, is that there are humans behind these diagnoses, behind these addictions, behind these words that we use to talk about things.
Yeah.
Real human beings, somebody's mother, someone's best friend, someone's aunt. And, I think that's the part that really matters. Because when I looked at the purpose, my mission, I guess, for the show, I was looking at, carrying the flag of, I want to destigmatize things. And I really questioned myself about, okay, why? Why do I want to destigmatize things? Well, stigmatization is a judgment, just like stereotypes are a judgment.
Right.
And judgments separate us.
Yeah.
And right now, we need connection more than anything else. And we have this perceived connection on social media that's not actually true or happening.
Yeah.
And we've got people behind closed doors suffering day in and day out because they're I know for me, and I can go from my experience, so I know if it's happening for me, one person, it's happening for others. And I was so overwhelmed with my pain that I couldn't even reach out to anyone else. I couldn't even, function beyond the basics of what I needed to do to keep a roof over, the head of my family that lives at home.
Were you scared when you were going through that? You knew what was going on, right? Were you scared?
I don't even know that I was in so much pain. I could barely just see the forest for the trees.
Wow.
So I was even beyond a sense of fear. I feel like now as I've started to come out of it a little bit, that I do have a little bit more of, oh, wow, that has been a lot. And this sense of, I don't want to go through that level of deep pain again. How do I avoid that? And how the heck did I manage all of that
That was a Barry Manilow song, by the way, See the Forest Through the Trees. I'm not sure if you knew that.
Oh, I didn't.
I just made that up. It's not.
Talk about somebody with a great voice. Oh.
I just made that up. It's so stupid. You'll come to understand my stupid jokes, and just all you got to do is push an ignore button on your end, and then everything's good.
Oh, yeah. I have one right here.
Perfect. Again, this is Stacy Lynn Robertson. She's out in Arizona basking in the sun where it's like 80 degrees. And
it is today.
Oh, bragger. She's got a podcast called Suicidal Thoughts Podcast, which is on all the major platforms. We are going to listen to a trailer in just a bit, and I want you to explain what this trailer is designed for. Is it to warn people? What you tell me.
Well, this one that I loaded on is it's kind of the promo for it, but it's both.
Yeah.
So it gives this little snippet in the beginning that tells you a little bit about why I am doing this,
okay,
and very specifically this particular podcast at this particular time. And then it goes into the purpose of the podcast, and it's good. I like it. I think it's informative.
How long are your podcasts usually? And not like that matters. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So this trailer is 2 minutes. The trigger warning and disclaimer is around the 4 to 5 minutes.
No, how long are your podcast segments?
Yeah, the segments, they go anywhere from the one I just uploaded this week is about 45 minutes.
Does it go by so fast when you're talking to somebody that you're really in tune with?
Yeah, well, what I do is I just let the conversation go, and then I deal with stuff in post-editing.
Oh, cool.
So we had an hour and a half conversation, and I just let it go where it was going to go. And then I, created more of the story and the intentional dialogue afterwards.
Yeah.
So it does, the podcast before that was right around an hour. Actually, it was with Darren, and it was right around hour 5.
Nice.
So I just want to have that flexibility that we could have a conversation about whatever, and then I'll deal with the other end of it afterwards, so that people feel comfortable to say and have the story that they're going to have. And there's tears and details and all kinds of things.
Well, when you're ready, let's hear what you have, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Let me make sure I pick the right button and my little thing here.
And by the way, to my audience, it's
on February 23rd, 2021. My life changed forever when my partner walked out of the front door to our home with a gun to kill himself. I didn't put all the pieces together until it could have been too late. Thankfully, it wasn't. That day taught me that someone you know, and maybe even someone you love, is feeling suicidal and you don't know it. Please, take the time to ask how your friends are. Really ask, are you okay today? Then stop and genuinely listen. I'm Stacy Lynn Robertson, and I'm here to have raw, unfiltered conversations. I'm an activist, coach, writer, and spent 20 years as a child and family therapist. I love people, and I'm fascinated by their stories of resilience. Suicidal Thoughts is a safe place to talk honestly about how each of us make it through some of the darkest moments of our lives. It's about tenacity. It's about grit. But mostly, it's about hope. I am blessed to have crossed paths with so many incredible people through my life. Physicians, inspirational coaches, thought leaders, and more. People want to share their stories of how they've made it through to the other side. I am so excited to share these conversations with you. My commitment to this show is to elevate, uplift, and inspire. I invite you to join me as I explore story after story and even share my own. Above all, we will celebrate how life's challenges can be transformed into gifts, like you listening to this podcast. And that, I didn't realize I'd put the one on that didn't have music to it. So the real one has music that goes with it. But that's the gist.
Wow, that's just as powerful without the music. I mean, I've got a couple,
good.
I've got a couple of thoughts already. I mean, made it through to the other side. Talking about people to say to them, hey, you okay? Come here. I mean, look, are you all right? I love you. What's going on? And, you know, you got to be able to say, hey, you okay? Come here. I mean, look, are you all right? I love you. What's going on? And, you know, you got to be able to say, hey, you okay? Come here. I mean, look, are you all right? I love you. What's going on? I mean, we take those things for granted.
Exactly.
And I'm trying not to ruin the episode that you're going to listen on mine, but I had someone take their life. And is this a normal reaction by my anger when this person was gone, for the feeling that they left someone that deeply cared about him? Was that normal, how I reacted? I was mad at this person. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Tim Ferriss, when he's talking to Andrew Huberman on one of his shows, actually says suicide is as if you were a suicide bomber and you walked into a room of all of your family members and friends and loved ones and detonate your suicide vest. And I want to say that pretty much any response is normal. Anger is one of the stages of grief, if we want to, I've got air quotes going on with my fingers now. But yeah, it's a lot of reactions are okay, but it's often really feeling angry with the person for not being able to see that there was hope, or that things were going to change. And it's really hard when you're in those moments to see that and feel that, when you have something going on that feels so pervasive, like you just can't get through it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And to feel like, people don't always know the extent to which others are there for them. Because there is stigma around feeling suicidal, and because people minimize it, like, oh, life isn't that bad, or all kinds of things that we say to each other. And people do say really dumb things to each other sometimes when they don't know what to say, they avoid.
Yeah.
They avoid because they're afraid. It activates our own pain too, right? When we see someone in so much pain, there's a little bit of panic that goes on for a minute. And so there's a whole gamut of responses that are very normal. Yeah.
There's a college kid in Nashville, I think, is where he was living. College kid made the news quite a bit for he went missing. And he was seen with his friends, his frat friends. He went into a bar, and the bar said that they served him 1 drink and 2 drinks of water. I don't know if you heard about this guy. He made a lot of national news. They just found his body today in the river.
Oh, they did.
They found him.
I just saw some stuff on YouTube about him. Yep, I saw the footage and stuff of him walking.
Yeah, they were trying to piece together some shots here and there. There was a shot where he walked by a police officer while the police officer was investigating some damage on some vehicles, and he said, "Hey, how's it going?" This was at night. They were trying to track down his last moments. They could, and the poor family was going crazy with fear, reaching out to everybody. And my only feeling was, hey, first of all, we all hope that it's nothing. If they do, unfortunately, find his body, we hope that that he didn't pass away to the arms and feet, to the arms and hands of somebody who murdered him. But this was, as far as what my engineer told me, that they don't expect foul play. And I'm thinking, then, was this a mental problem? Was this something that he wanted to escape life? He wanted to get away. And they found his body in the river. The reason why I bring this up to you is, I'm sure as a therapist, you have had so many people that you've talked to in the past. Do you see hollowness in their eyes? Do you see some little bit of warning going on? Do they tell you by their actions? I don't know how you could do what you do. I don't.
Yeah, that is a fabulous question, and I feel like a lot of people on YouTube or other places, I just came across this of someone that I feel like is using it as clickbait, or saying, here's the number one sign of someone who is suicidal, and there is no number one sign. And I think that's the part that motivated me to do this show, because I went through the experience. I am clinically trained to see all of the signs and to know what to look for. And I still have had numerous people in my personal life and my family who have attempted suicide. And I didn't know what was going on.
That to me is horror. That is horror. That to me is
It is.
horror.
It's terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yes.
And
traumatizing.
And traumatizing.
Yeah, it's horrible. And I think that's, I'm going to do an episode that just lists off I probably have about 10 or 15 myths right now that I'm accumulating before I sit down and push the record button.
Right.
And I wish that I could say that, yes, there is one thing in particular, but there isn't. Sometimes people say, oh, someone who's going to commit suicide might feel, energized, or they might be giving away their property, or, there are all kinds of things. And on the other hand, you have people who don't do any of that, who still die by suicide, who appear at face value to be happy. And I would say that there are people in my life who had no idea the degree to which I've had my own struggles with suicidal depression.
Yeah.
And, throughout my life and for various reasons. It's not the core issue of why I'm having it is for different things. And I don't mean different things in terms of life events. I just mean a different internal experience for each of these kind of phases of my life. And that's why I'm willing to talk about these things. And as a mental health professional, there's a lot of stigma that I faced the very first time that I even was willing to say that I had suicidal thoughts. The room, you could hear crickets drop. And I knew someone who was he's a national activist for suicide prevention. And he asked me if I would get up at our luncheon and speak, because nobody was talking about this back then. And this was back in 2009.
Right.
And, I said, yeah, absolutely. Now I feel like there's more awareness now ever since we went through 2020. And, the suicide rates have continued to increase. Some age areas have decreased only slightly, but overall. And people are suffering. And I feel like if we could just have more conversation about it and make it okay for someone who's feeling that way to talk about it, and then someone who might suspect it to ask about it, for them to feel comfortable.
And you see, this is the angle that I was going through in my head last night. What angle am I going to have to tell people why Stacy Lynn Robertson is on the podcast? Some people might say, is she an alcoholic? Is she a drug addict? The thing is that her podcast that you can hear on Spotify and all the platforms, called Suicidal Thoughts Podcast, is designed to those of you out there who are suffering from thoughts in your head, your own depression, and your own life being that maybe you shouldn't be around any longer. And this is why I have her on, and we're going to talk about how this affected you yourself, Stacy, how you went through this yourself, contemplating taking yourself out.
Yes. And I do want to add that I shared with you just a little bit before, my dad was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I was not raised with him. I found him when I was an adult, and he came back into my life. And so I was on the receiving end of his alcoholism and the complexity that it was. And one of the things that's interesting to me about that is that I don't know why, but for some reason, my body literally doesn't tolerate alcohol very well, almost as if I have an allergy to it. And I have to say that I'm so thankful for that, because I feel that if my body tolerated it better, in quotes, that I would probably be an alcoholic myself.
You may, yeah.
Because
we don't know that. You may. Because
why? Well, and I say that I don't say that because of my dad.
Yeah.
I say that because my tendency to want to not deal with the pain of my life has been to utilize substances, whether that's alcohol, whether that's been prescription pills, whether that's been experiences, meditation. And some of those are more productive or efficient or useful or functional than others. But, that tendency is still there. And also during the time that my dad, he died of liver cancer and other complications related to his alcoholism, I became addicted to prescription pills.
That's
and
easy
not a
to
lot
do.
of people know that.
That's easy to do.
And because I was trying to cope with all of my anxiety, all of my grief. I was working 2 jobs. I was raising 3 little kids. And I was devastated,
Yeah.
that this was happening. And so I was taking a bunch of medications, and I didn't realize that I had become physiologically addicted to them. And then when I stopped taking them, because I thought I'm going to have to deal with this myself once he was passed and buried.
Yep.
And I thought I had the flu. And what I recognized afterwards was I was in detox, and I didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I have had experiences. And the other thing about listening to your shows, and that's what I was wondering is, where do I fit into the topics of recovery that you're talking about? But it makes so much sense to me, because when we do have substances in our lives, like, that's our way of coping. And sometimes when someone is trying to get through the other side into recovery from their, use and abuse and addiction and all of those things, they don't feel like they're capable of doing it.
Yeah.
And it feels like, I don't want to deal with my pain, even if it's life-threatening. I don't know how to do this. I feel like I can't do it. All of the social things that go with it that you faced as well in your story. And so feeling suicidal is a very active aspect, I think, of that addiction. And then the other thing is that someone with addiction is more at risk to die by suicide.
I have a question, and you said that I could ask you pretty much anything, and
you can.
And if I go over that line, I can tell how easygoing you are. I trust that you'll tell me. And once again, I am not an expert. I tell this to everybody, so this may be a stupid question, but I'd kind of like to know, if you don't mind me asking this.
Yeah. Ask.
What is the worst day of your life, Ben? Do you remember? Do you have something funnel that's been your worst day or time of your life? I want to hear, because you'll hear many of us talk about our bottom, about how we had finally finished. And there's many people that I've had on that have pinpointed a point to where they're like, you know what, whatever. They'll tell me. Do you remember a time when you said to yourself, this is the worst day or days of my life?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was last summer, probably around July or August timeframe. And one of the things that I have learned about is something called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, so complex PTSD.
Okay.
And I didn't even know that until around this time last year, when I was going through probably my darkest day. And I talk about there was an episode that dropped that I didn't interview for, it dropped today, but I had just come out of my son had attempted suicide, and I didn't know it. He had laid there for 8.5 hours before I found him. And, I got him medical help, got him to the hospital. And once he was finally hospitalized, it was like all the walls came crumbling down. I just completely lost it. And one of the things that I want to add is I can't count how many times with this particular son, he has schizoaffective disorder, so schizophrenia and bipolar combined.
Yeah.
Aside from him, I've personally intervened on approximately 10 different family members and or same family members with various situations where they are actively suicidal, or they've already attempted, or they're going to attempt.
Wow.
And so that trauma just accumulated and accumulated and accumulated. And then you add in my profession as a crisis therapist and a suicide interventionist over 20 years' time. That also accumulated. And last summer, I walked out of that hospital, got in my car, drove over to my apartment, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to die. And it felt like my brain, I was so completely overwhelmed with pain, with not knowing if this was going to happen again, and feeling like I couldn't do it again ever. And that I called my best friend because I didn't know if I should call 911 if I was having a legitimate medical issue. I felt like I was going to die, that I couldn't breathe, that all the life force of me had been drained, that I had nothing left to give, nothing else nothing else that I could do, and I couldn't see a way out. And I wasn't necessarily suicidal in that moment. I didn't even have the energy to be that. I felt like I was going to close my eyes and die.
Yeah.
It was so awful, and it was the closest I've probably ever been to feeling a total and complete mental breakdown. That at that moment, I knew something had to change or I would die.
Wow.
And
that was when?
That was
a year
the moment.
ago?
Yeah, it was in July-ish, so not quite a year ago. And
Wow.
I have a big kind of poster-sized piece that I wrote, I art or I die. And that was I had to find something to get the pain out of me.
Yeah.
It was like, when you have a sore or an abscess, and I don't mean to be gross, but
No.
you go into the doctor and you get it cut and all the infection comes out.
Sure.
And I felt like my entire body was just full of this pain from so many people in my life who didn't want to live or who were facing really serious issues. I have other people in my life, and I don't want to call out anybody necessarily because I haven't talked about, telling their pieces of the story because it's theirs to tell.
Yeah.
But I had people very, very close to me besides my dad who are and have faced alcoholism and are in sobriety currently. And, the impact that has had on our family for them. And, so I just am like, I can't deal with one more thing anymore. And it was that day.
Well, I was just going to say, when you were going through that really dark, edgy time, did all the thoughts of all the people you've dealt with, the lives that you've dealt with who have lived and died, did all those thoughts go through your head? And now you're right there in it, afraid and scared? I can't even imagine that.
It's really a sense of, I think first responders deal with it, doctors and nurses deal with it, and therapists, and especially crisis therapists deal with it, is that we see a side of life that a lot of other people don't see.
Wow.
From, the abuse that happens to babies and infants and who are removed from their parents to, people who are incarcerated, and just, it's a horrible, there's a lot of stuff that people don't have any ideas going on. And having a lifetime of, it was this sense of even me questioning, is there hope in this world? Are there good people? Is there a way to get through this kind of pain when everybody that I know feels, I feel like is in it?
Yeah.
Or has some level of overwhelming discomfort or, things that they are facing.
Yeah.
And it just felt like this huge pile on top of me, which is why I felt like I couldn't breathe, because I felt everywhere I turned is someone who doesn't want to live or who is facing, their demons. And I was like, I need to, I can laugh about it now, but part of my therapy too is I go on YouTube sometimes or Instagram, wherever, and I look at puppies and kittens and babies giggling and flowers.
I
and
do too. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to realize that because I choose to see a way through or be someone who can help others deal with these types of things, that's not all that there is in the world.
Well, if you want to get to the comedy side of that, you said you were looking at puppies and flowers and cats. You can look at all my ugly pictures on my Facebook and see what a real life disc jockey looks like. That'll bring you a little comedy relief.
Yes, exactly.
Real quick though, here is what I'm amazed about, and what I'm most I couldn't do your job, and I'll tell you why. Because my question to you is, how are you a therapist and you do what you do without you cannot? Okay, it's impossible to me to not to be attached to those that you talk to. Impossible. And yet, you come across doctors and this and that, and you talk to them about that or that, or some teachers who say, even teachers, I try not to become attached to them. What you do, how can you not become attached to them? It's impossible to me.
Yeah, well, and so I have never approached I have had various professions, and I've never approached it from the standpoint that I need to not become attached.
Yeah.
I have a big heart, and
I can tell.
love big, and so when I have a human being that's sitting in front of me who's in pain, of course I become attached. I become, I want to know that they're going to get through it. I want them to see and feel, what some sense of hope, and so I've never come at it from that perspective, because I feel like the world needs more love, and that it doesn't hurt to be able to just sit down with someone. And I do that on a daily basis. I come across opportunities, or I take opportunities to just take a deep breath and look into the eyes, have a handshake with, the store clerk or a barista or whatever that I could just be present with, because people don't have that. And people are struggling to know how to be present for themselves, let alone for other people.
You see, I would have bet my car that you would have said that. I would have bet my car that would have been your answer. What you just said a second ago. Oh, yeah. I like I said, we've never met. We just barely talked before we went on here. But I can tell by your voice, which, by the way, pisses me off because it's a nicer, more radio voice than I have.
Well, thank you.
Almost everybody has a nicer voice than I do. I can tell of your heart through your thoughts and your words. And, that says a lot. That says a lot, especially to people, to correlate. Okay, to correlate. I don't even know if that makes sense. To combine and compare alcoholism, being a drug addict, any kind of addiction, to thoughts of suicide. There's a loneliness involved. I remember when I was at my worst and my deep, dark, black thoughts, I thought to myself, this isn't going to get any better. Life is not going to get any better, and I'm miserable, and I don't know what to do, and I don't see a way out. When I think of others that I've had some friends before tell me of their thoughts of suicide, and they've brought it up before, and they've said to me, you know what, if I took my life, would it matter to you? And I said, of course it would. Would you understand? No, I wouldn't. Why can't you understand so I can go? And I remember telling this person, I cannot give you my permission to take your own life. You wouldn't do that to me, would you? I'm not going to go into this story, but I had no knowledge, and I had no experience, and I didn't know what to tell a person that's really hurting. However, we do have a ton of resources out there. I'm sure you'll be able to say some of them that people can call and just talk to. Now, is this the line of business that what you do so well is if somebody right now listening to this podcast out there is saying, hey, I don't know what to do with my life anymore, and I'm in a whirlwind of pain and hurt. What can I do? And this is that same approach that I have with There Is a Way Out with drugs and alcohol with you now and suicide. Tell some of the people what people can do if they've got thoughts of hollowness.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if everyone knows that they have now they have a new national number, 988. So instead of 911, so 988 is for a warm line for being able to talk to someone. And ultimately, so at the end of my show, I have the a little tagline that says, stay safe, talk to someone, reach out, kind of thing. That there has to be an onus on both parties, both the person who is suffering and the people in our lives there are people who don't experience depression or suicidal thoughts. I'm amazed by that because
say that again. Say that again. There are people.
Yes, there are.
How do you know that?
There are people.
How do you know that they 100% are not thinking in the back of their mind?
Well, there are, because I've had people reach out to me and say, and people that I know who said, I have never felt that way in my whole life.
Right.
Yeah, which is shocking to me. I found people who have never once had to call 911.
What's shocking to you about
me.
that? Is it shocking to you that someone has gone their whole life in that perfect direction of everything bliss, no alcohol problems, no drugs, no thoughts of hurting themselves, kind of like a Leave It to Beaver scenario or Father Knows Best, where everything's butterflies zooming around. It's black and white until they walk outside, and then it's color, and everything is great. No problems with their car. They've never been laid off or their job. They're not hurting to make a payment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What is their approach that's making it so beautiful?
Well, and I would say that it isn't. They haven't had a perfect life. Like I can think of someone that I know in particular, where they have had a lot of struggles.
Yeah.
It's just never crossed their mind. Ever.
Isn't that something?
It is. It's amazing to me because I was like, wow. It's like, it's like a circus animal. Like,
you know what that sounds like, Stacy? It sounds like a wish to hell it could be a drink or a pill we could take to get to that level where they're thinking.
Sure.
And then, of course, us alcoholics would drink way too much of it. Or drug addicts, and we'd be taking too much of it. But I understand what you're telling me. There are some people that are so even keel and beautiful in life. Maybe those are the religious people. I do believe there is a God, and that's my own belief. But, could be that. I mean, it could be anything. And then they tell you in our program, you have to have a higher power, whether it is God or a doorknob or your left shoe. It's got to be something that it is your higher power. You've heard that before, correct?
I have, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that is bigger than yourself.
Yes.
That's what I attribute it to. Yes.
Let me ask you this, and I ask this. My job, besides boring people on the radio and putting them to sleep, because I actually cure insomnia. What they do is they tell people, you got insomnia? I do, doctor. Go ahead and listen to Bromo
that's why I slept so well last night. Thank you.
All right, you don't have to go along with the bit already. I write articles, and in the articles, what was, by the way, what I just lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
You're asking me.
No, what are we?
Well, we were talking about people who, have a more ideal experience, and then we were talking about higher power.
Oh, higher power.
And
gosh darn it! See, I'm so clueless. I just lost my train of thought. I had a great train of thought. I was going to lead in you with a joke that was going into it, and with some of my stories that I would write about higher power. And I've completely lost my train of thought. It was a good one too. Damn it!
You were walking along the tracks trying to find it, though.
Yeah, I am. The reason why I brought this podcast up a long time ago is because I do know there are a lot of people out there that go through pain and like to keep it to themselves, or they don't know what to do about it.
Yes.
And that's the sad thing. Boy, I've had so many people. You heard me say on one of my podcasts the first day, and I tell this a lot, and everybody knows it. The first day I was in that recovery home, the teacher says, look around behind you, look to the side. You see all the guys in here? There's 40 of us. After a year, about 2 or 3 of you will be sober. That's the odds. And the rest of you will be missing out on the streets and dead or whatever, or in jail. And I remember thinking, come on, don't be so, don't be so, overdoing it with the
pessimistic,
with the drama.
Yeah.
Right. What you do. Oh, here's what I was going to ask you. Okay. In my articles, no matter who I interview, whether it's a rock star or it's somebody who owns their own shoe store, somebody that plays sports, here's my question to you. What is your favorite part of what you do? What's your favorite part of your job? What's your favorite part of your podcast? What is the favorite part that makes you, Stacy Lynn Robertson, tick? What's your favorite part?
Oh, man. I love connecting people, and I love being present for someone.
Yeah.
And watching the power of that presence. That is, when I talk about that on my little promo intro, I love storytelling, and I love, pulling out the parts of people's stories that are hopeful, and that even some of them that they can't see themselves.
Yeah.
And that there's something about, I recognize a gift for myself that I have in this ability to help people. I make people feel comfortable that they can talk to me about anything. And we don't always come up with a solution in those conversations.
Right.
But especially when you're facing things that are just so gritty, and raw, okay, to have someone that you can just kind of let your hair down and take a big, deep breath.
Are you that person?
Yes. Yeah,
See?
I am.
What if I need that person? What if I reach out to you later on tonight, like around 11:30, and say, hey, this is what I need. I need someone to laugh at my stupid jokes and or whatever.
Yes.
Isn't that awesome? And you know what? I think that that's been obvious for this whole 49 minutes that we've been on. That's what you do so well.
Oh,
and that is
you.
a gift.
Thank you. I appreciate
you're welcome.
that. And I feel called to do this podcast that I'm doing with Suicidal Thoughts. I feel like suicide as a topic and all the things that encompass that, I've really opened it up with the show to be able to not just be about suicide. And so, like Darren, he comes on and talks about his recovery, and I have other people who talk about that. And so it's everything. It's the big, soup mix of our world and what it takes to get through it. And so I feel really passionate about it. And again, like I said, it's less about people. I want to give people the opportunity to see what connection looks like when I'm sitting down and talking with someone. Yeah. And then to allow that to help, like I said in the beginning, like help people connect with more people in their own life, for them to connect with resources and for resources to be able to find people who need them. That's the purpose of the show is, connecting with me is great. And I want, if people want to be on the show, they can email me, they can reach out on social media to share their story. And I think that each of our stories are really important. And I had an experience where I went out very publicly 20 years ago to share my story. It was on a national reality daytime talk show. And that story was, taken by the media mogul that person was. And I didn't get to share the real humanity of myself. Yeah. And ever since that experience, I said, no more. I will be the owner of my own story. Yeah. And who gets to hear it. And so that's been a passion of mine too, is to really honor people where they are and to tell what they want to tell and to not make that contrived or make it out to make money or all the things that sometimes our media outlets do. Yeah. Because I believe that those true stories help people.
Well, you're awesome. You spent 51 minutes with me, and I want to have you on again if you will. Will you do that?
Absolutely. Yes. I appreciate you so much.
Of
for
course.
Doing this.
Listen, this is Stacy Lynn Robertson, her Suicidal Thoughts podcast. I encourage anybody to go on and listen to. How many podcasts do you have out there now? Segments, episodes?
Just two.
Just two, but she's building on them.
Yeah.
And she's wonderful, as you could tell.
I've got more that are,
And she's going to come on with
They're
me
in the
again.
wings.
Stacy, hang on real quick, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Hang on real quick. That's awesome. I'm blown away by her, and I can't wait to talk to her again because I could easily go another hour or two. I don't want to take away all of her time, but again, Suicidal Thoughts Podcast, that's on Spotify. My name is Bromo. Thank you so much for being part of There Is a Way Out. This is the strength of my podcast, what you just heard, my guests. And again, for anybody who's fighting the urge, anybody that has any family members, friends, or relatives, somebody who's listening to this going, you know what? Boy, that makes sense. I may have a problem. I just want to let you know, man, there is a way out.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.